The New England Business Group presents It's All About Business. Our presentation today is Making Decisions, Part 1. Welcome to the 7th presentation, Making Decisions, Part 1 in the New England Business Group's pre-startup series. This session will discuss managerial decision-making for your business idea, while the entire 7 presentation series will help you evaluate your business opportunities so that you can reach a go, no-go decision. I am Larry Gable, President and CEO of the New England Business Group, and I will be your presenter today. Decision-making is especially important for management and leadership. Good decisions require a person to bring a number of characteristics to bear, that is, experience, instinct, intelligence, alertness to changes in the business environment, good listening skills, and a willingness to react when necessary. Modern decision theory has identified processes and techniques to improve decision-making and the quality of decisions. Whether it's a learned skill or a natural talent, making good decisions can put a business owner on a path toward long-term success. Decision-making is more natural to certain personalities, so these people should focus more on improving the quality of their decisions. People that are less natural decision makers are often able to make quality assessments, but then need to be more decisive in acting upon those assessments. Good decision-making requires a mixture of skills, that is, creative development and identification of options, clarity of judgment, firmness of decision, and effective implementation. Whether the decision-making skill is an innate gut feeling or is learned over a course of years, the bottom line is that being a more effective decision maker requires practice. The New England Business Group has crafted a pre-startup process to help the entrepreneur organize thoughts and prioritize activities in order to optimize the idea development and research process, leading to the go, no-go decision based on knowledge, market research, and situational analysis. The result is an informed decision process that is geared to the realities of the marketplace. The net effect for the entrepreneur is to have acquired an enhanced information set upon which to build a business plan. The work and effort invested in business research and analysis is not wasted, but rather immediately useful in the development of the business plan. The decision module is the last of 7 pre-startup modules. In this module, we discuss the processes associated with managerial decision-making and examine the elements that may be applied to that process. We will look at several decision-making models as well as a decision tool to help provide clarity in complex decision processes. At the end of the process, the entrepreneur will be ready to complete the idea evaluation process and make the go, no-go decision. Should the decision be go, the entrepreneur will have sufficient knowledge to enter the business planning process, that is, further iteration and elaboration, and create a credible business plan. Business opportunities are like buses. There's always another one coming. A quote from Richard Branson. Let's look at the nature of decision making. From our perspective, decision theory is concerned with identifying the best decision to take, assuming an ideal decision maker who is fully informed, able to compute with perfect accuracy, and fully rational. In practice, there are situations in which best is not necessarily maximal. Optimum may include values in addition to maximum, but within a specific or appropriate range. The practical application of this prescriptive approach, how people ought to make decisions, is called decision analysis and aimed at finding tools, methodologies, and software to help people make better decisions. One can make the case that decision-making is the most basic and fundamental of all managerial activities. Decision-making is closely linked with the planning function, but it is also part of organizing, directing, and controlling. Quite literally, organizations operate by people making decisions. A manager plans, organizes, staffs, leads, and controls her team by executing decisions. The effectiveness and quality of those decisions determine how successful a manager and the organization will be. So decisions can be done in response to opportunities that occur when managers respond to ways to improve the organizational performance. And decisions are also in response to threats that occur when events inside or outside of the organization are adversely affecting the organization's performance. Decision-making process. The decision-making process includes recognizing and defining the nature of the decision situation and identifying alternatives, choosing the best, the most effective alternative, and putting it into practice, i.e. execution. And the decisions may be made to optimize some set of factors such as profit, sales, market share, and employee welfare, possibly to minimize loss, expenses, or employee turnover, to select the best method for achieving a defined business goal, and to respond to problems as well as opportunities. Let's look at types of decisions. There are two fundamental types of decisions that we'll deal with. The first is the program decision, which may be used when situations occur often enough to enable decision rules to be developed and applied in the future. These are made in response to recurring organizational problems. And generally, you have a rule or a set of procedures that will carry you through the decision process, and it becomes very easy then to make a program decision. Then there's non-program decisions. These are used when decisions are in response to unique, poorly defined, and largely unstructured problems that have important consequences for the organization. And here, decision rules do not apply. Managers are constantly called upon to make decisions in order to solve problems. Decision-making and problem-solving are ongoing processes of evaluating situations, considering alternatives, making choices, and following them up with necessary actions. Sometimes the decision-making process is extremely short, and mental reflection is essentially instantaneous. In other situations, the process can drag on for weeks or even months. The entire decision-making process is dependent upon the right information being available to the right people at the right times. So let's look at some characteristics and other artifacts of the decision-making and decision-making processes. Let's look at the characteristics first. The characteristics of decision-making include, first, decision-making is a process of selection or choice among alternative courses of action. The need for decision-making arises only when more than one alternative exists. Second, the goal of decision-making is to find out the best possible course of action. It is a rational and purposeful activity designed to achieve your objectives. Decisions relate the means to the ends. In order to identify the best alternative, it is necessary to evaluate all available alternatives. As decision-making is always purposeful, there may be a decision not to decide. Third, decision-making is an intellectual or rational process. As a mental exercise, it involves considerable deliberation and thoughtful consideration of various factors influencing the choices. It is the end of a process preceded by reasoning and judgment. And fourth, decision-making involves a commitment because a decision results into a commitment of resources. The commitment may be for short-term or long-term. Therefore, decision-making involves a time dimension and a potential time lag. Fifth, decision-making is always related to the situation or the environment. A manager may take one decision in a particular situation and an opposite decision in a different situation. Sixth, decision-making is a pervasive function of management. This function is performed by managers at all levels. Though the nature of the decisions may differ from one level to another, decision-making is a continuous process. Seventh, decision-making is a human and social process. It involves the use of the intellectual abilities as well as intuition, subjective values, and judgment. It is not a purely intellectual process. Perception and human judgment are indispensable, and no technique can replace them. But knowledge and experience also provide the basis for correct decisions. The eighth characteristic is the choice in decision-making implies freedom to choose from among alternative courses of action without coercion. It also implies uncertainty about the final outcome. So next, let's look at the decision-making models very quickly. There are many decision-making models that exist today. We will confine our discussion to the three most relevant for small and medium businesses. The first is the rational model, or the classical model. This model comes from classical economics, in which the decision maker is perfectly and completely rational in every way. In this, the following conditions are assumed. First, clear-cut problem and goals. No ambiguity there. Secondly, condition of certainty. Third, we have full information about alternatives and their outcomes. And fourth, the rational choice by individuals can be made for maximizing outcomes. That is the classical model. Secondly, we'll look at the administrative model. Managers actually make decisions in difficult situations characterized by non-program decisions, uncertainty, and ambiguity. This is characterized by vague problems and goals. It's not always absolutely clear what the actual problem is. And secondly, it has a condition of uncertainty. Third, there's limited information about the alternatives and outcomes. And last, satisficing choice for resolving the problems can be used. Satisficing here says that you'll pick the first acceptable alternative that falls within your solution boundary. So you're not necessarily going to optimize or maximize in that particular case. And third is the political model. This concept of decision-making as a political process emphasizes the natural multiplicity of goals, values, and interests in a complex environment. It includes pluralistic, that is, conflicting goals. Next, it has a condition of uncertainty or ambiguity. And third, it's inconsistent viewpoints and ambiguous information. And last, there's bargaining and discussion among coalition members, so it's truly a political model. We will proceed working under the assumption that we are using the rational model for our business decisions. The rational model uses 6 steps in the decision process. First, define the problem. Second, identify the decision criteria. Third, allocate weights to the criteria. Fourth, develop the alternatives. Fifth, evaluate the alternatives. And sixth, select the best alternative. So as we move forward, we may have some experienced decision makers, and there are some techniques to improve your decision-making process. These include: consider as many alternatives as possible. Reframe the question. Look at it from multiple perspectives and try to gain a more complete understanding of the question and the problem you're trying to solve. Then you make contingency plans. Always perform a cost-benefit analysis and work from facts, not anecdotal evidence. And last but not least, be and stay rational. Now, the last artifact that we're going to discuss is the decision matrix. A decision matrix is a list of values in rows and columns that allows a manager to systematically identify, analyze, and rate the performance of relationships between sets of values and information. Elements of a decision matrix show decisions based on certain decision criteria. The matrix is useful for looking at large masses of decision factors and assessing each factor's relative significance. So let's revisit the program decisions a little bit more. These are the ones that are regarding basic operational systems and procedures and standard organizational transactions that fall into this category. So your program decisions are those that a manager has encountered and made in the past. The decision the manager made was correct because he or she used the assistance of organizational policies, computations, or a set of decision-making guidelines. In addition to being well structured from predetermined rules regarding the decision-making process, program decisions may also be repetitive or routine as their outcome was successful in the past. It generally does not take a manager long to come to a conclusion when faced with a business-related program decision because the challenge faced is not new. As a result, program decisions allow a manager to make streamlined and consistently effective choices. Now let's revisit the non-programmed decisions a bit. A non-programmed decision involves scenarios that are new or novel and for which there is no proven answers to use as a guide. In such a case, a manager must make a decision that is unique to the situation and results in a tailored solution. Non-programmed decisions generally take longer to make because of all the variables an individual must weigh, and the fact that the information available is incomplete. So a manager cannot easily anticipate the outcome of his decision. Many decisions that managers deal with every day involve at least some degree of uncertainty and require non-programmed decision making. Decision making can be regarded as a cognitive process in the selection of a belief or a course of action among several alternative possibilities. Every decision-making process produces a final choice that may or may not prompt action. Decision-making is the study of identifying and choosing alternatives based on values and preferences of the decision maker. Decision-making is one of the central activities of management and is a huge part of any process of implementation. Decision-making can also be regarded as a problem-solving activity terminated by a solution deemed to be satisfactory. It is therefore a reasoning or emotional process which can be rational or irrational and be based on explicit assumptions or tacit assumptions. Now let's look at some decision-making conditions. Virtually every decision in a modern business enterprise is based on interplay of a number of factors. One factor is certainty. In this type of decision-making environment, there is only one type of event that can take place. It is very difficult to find complete certainty in most business decisions. However, in many routine-type decisions, almost complete certainty can be noticed. These decisions generally are of very little significance to the success of a business. Secondly, there is the condition of uncertainty. In the environment of uncertainty, more than one type of event can take place, and the decision maker is completely in the dark regarding the event that is likely to take place. The decision maker is not in a position even to assign the probabilities of a happening of events. Such situations generally arise in cases where happening of event is determined by external factors. For example, the demand for a product or moves of your competitors. Now, these are all factors that involve uncertainty. And last is the condition of risk. Under the condition of risk, there are more than one possible event that can take place. However, the decision maker has adequate information to assign probability to the happening or non-happening of each possible event. Such information is generally based on past experience. In the context of decision theory, ambiguity can be defined as the inability to characterize or describe important aspects of a decision, such as core problems, future conditions, alternatives, or criteria. So let's look at decisions under certainty. Decision making under certainty implies that we are certain of a future state of nature. This means that the probability of the future is 1, and all other features have 0 probability. The solution, naturally, is to choose the alternative that gives us the most favorable outcome. Although this may seem like a trivial exercise, there are many problems that are so complex that sophisticated mathematical techniques are needed to find the best solution. Linear programming is one such technique. In this method, a desired benefit can be expressed as a mathematical function of several variables. The solution is a set of values for decision variables that serves to maximize the benefit, or, as in many problems, to minimize the cost, and subject to certain limitations. Now let's look at decisions under uncertainty. At times, a decision maker cannot assess the probability of occurrence for the various states of nature. Uncertainty occurs when there exists several, that is more than one, future states of nature, but the probabilities of each of those states occurring are not known. In such situations, the decision maker can choose among several possible approaches for making a decision. A different kind of logic is used here based on the attitudes toward risk. Different approaches to decision making under uncertainty include the following. The optimistic decision will choose the alternative that offers the highest possible outcome. The pessimistic decision will choose the alternative whose worst outcome is least bad. And a third decision maker may choose a position somewhere between optimism and pessimism. Other decision makers may simply assume that all states of nature are equally likely, and this is called the principle of insufficient reason. And they will set all probability values equal to 1 and maximize expected value based on that assumption. Okay, a state of risk exists when a decision maker makes decisions under a condition in which the availability of each alternative and its potential payoffs and costs are all associated with probability estimates. Decision making under risk assumes that there exists a number of possible future states and that each state is known or assumed probability of occurrence is known, and there may not be one future state that results in the best outcome for all alternatives. Given the future states and their probabilities, the solution is the alternative that provides the highest expected value. Why do half of all business decisions fail? Paul Nutt studied nearly 400 business decisions made by senior managers in medium to large organizations. The decisions made were based on a mix of analytical and experimental information, expert opinion, and gut feel. The study found 3 main classes of blunders. First, decision makers used failure-prone practices in 2 out of 3 decisions made. Further, there seems to be little insight into the poor track record of these practices and failures, and they are seldom studied. Second, decision makers base many decisions on premature commitments In other words, many decisions are actually efforts to justify a premature conclusion rather than using evidence to select the best action. And third, decision makers spend time and money on the wrong things. That is, tasks that do not add value to making the best possible decision. Hence, they don't have a strategy to determine what to do next. All right, in summary, we've looked at the nature of decision making and briefly looked at the decision making process and the two basic types of decisions, the programmed and non-programmed, and then decisions under certainty, uncertainty, and risk. Time for questions and answers. And I have a question from the studio audience. It is, how can I avoid paralysis by analysis? Well, paralysis by analysis refers to repeatedly delaying a decision to allow for more analysis to make a better choice. More analysis costs money, and delays use time and likely cause psychological wear and tear, i.e. stress. And depending on the decision context, the delay could allow competitors to beat you to an opportunity, or a desirable alternative that you were considering could disappear. For instance, a house that you were considering buying has been sold to someone else. So recognize all the negative consequences of waiting to decide and compare these to the likely improvement of delaying the decision. The comparison should reduce paralysis by analysis. So we have completed part 1 of step 7 of the 7-step process, and you should feel confident in evaluating your business ideas. In the next session, we will step through the decision-making process some more. There we will answer the question, how can I make better decisions?